further put some perspective on how the gunman ended up dead? Was it at his own hands or a member of law enforcement? Or
at this point, I'm not going to discuss any of that. Again, we're at the preliminary stages of this investigation. We have active crime scenes that we're investigating right now. We have a significant amount of resources. Both the FBI and Chattanooga Police Department and other agencies have dedicated significant resources. We expect probably by the end of the day we will have several hundred FBI resources on scene to conduct this investigation.
You can't tell us he shot himself or someone shot him?
At this point, again, we have not conducted a complete crime scene investigation. So
Do you
until
not know the answer to that question, though? Or do you just know?
I have a suspicion to the answer to that question, but again, I want to make sure the evidence confirms anything that we can say.
Are we currently at a threat level?
No higher threat level than we were before.
Can you confirm the two different locations?
I'm sorry.
Can you confirm the two different locations?
There were two separate locations. Both of them were military facilities, both Naval Reserve facilities here in Chattanooga.
Is there any kind of timeline for which shooting happened first?
We believe the one over on Lee Highway occurred first, and then, and I believe this is probably public record, Chattanooga PD began pursuit of the individual, and it ended at the second naval facility.
Where exactly were the Marines killed?
All of the victims that were killed were over at the Naval Reserve Center on, how do you say the name? Abacola Highway.
Were there victims who were wounded and not killed in the exchange?
Yes, there are some victims that are being treated at local hospitals.
What's their condition?
I believe total of 3, including the police officer.
Is there any indication that this might be tied to the trial of Mr. Doggett that's going on here?
We have no indication that it's tied to anything at this point.
Do you know if the suspect is local from Chattanooga?
We believe he's probably from this area, or at least is residing in this area prior to the event.
Do you know where he's living?
No, not at this point.
Does he have military history, background? No.
Not that we're aware of, but again, let me emphasize, this is a brand new investigation. We have received a lot of information at this point that we're trying to process, so we want to make sure we get it right before we start releasing any type of information to the public.
Can you tell us anything about why you think it's domestic terrorism? Yeah. That's a strong statement to make this early.
No. We will treat this as a terrorism investigation until it can be determined that it was not.
What was the suspect armed with?
Numerous weapons, and I'm not going to go into details as to what those were.
Was he wearing body armor?
Not that I'm aware of.
Nothing bolt action, right? All semi-auto?
Again, I'm not going to discuss what he had on him at the time.
Can you speak more about those killed? Were they active duty? What branch of the military were they in?
Okay, because the families have not been notified, we're still in the process of processing the scene. I'm not going to release any particulars about the victims at this point.
Domestic terrorism, does that rule out any link to possible ISIS, maybe?
No. We are looking at every possible avenue, whether it was terrorism, whether it was domestic, international, or whether it was a simple criminal act. We're looking at that.
Do you believe the shooter has accomplices in Chattanooga? Are you?
Again, we are at the beginning of this investigation. We have not ruled out any possibilities at this point.
How should we follow up? How can we get more info when you're ready to say?
You can contact the public affairs officer at our Knoxville office, or you can contact our headquarters in Washington, D.C.
So just to make it clear, you have not determined then it's an act of domestic terrorism?
Correct. We have not determined whether it was an act of terrorism or whether it was a criminal act.
Do you know whether the shooter has a criminal record or not?
Again, I'm not going to discuss him at this point because we have active investigations, and I don't want to put any of my personnel or the Chattanooga PD's personnel in any type of at risk at this point.
Did the shooter die at Amnicola?
Pardon me?
Did the shooter die on Amnicola?
He did, yes.
How many rounds did he shoot?
We don't know yet.
What times did the two different incidents happen?
It started at probably around 10:45 and ended within 30 minutes.
Are there any other military installations or within the state or within this area that are also maybe on lockdown or on alert at this time?
We have notified the facilities, the other military facilities in the state of Tennessee or within the area. It was their decision whether or not they wanted to go into lockdown or not.
What's the difference between a terrorism investigation and a crime investigation?
The investigation itself, probably not a whole lot of difference. It's just a determination of the motivation.
So the motive determines whether it's terrorism or just crime?
Correct.
And what's the difference between the two?
a disgruntled employee, for example, and I'm just using that example because he did not work at the facilities, but a disgruntled employee would not be necessarily an act of terrorism. But if he's motivated by, say, ISIL or somebody else, then that would be an act of terrorism.
Have you determined any kind of motive or if he had any connection to any of the Marines that were killed?
We have not, no.
Did he have other targets in Chattanooga?
Not that we're aware of.
People still locked down in businesses. Is that lockdown lifted, or is it at the discretion of the business?
Chief?
We have officers from my jurisdiction, from the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, and from neighboring jurisdictions, making sure everybody in this community, wherever they are, is safe. Those decisions are made with the business owners and the homeowners. The decisions are made for the specific conditions of that area. But we have sent units to every place that might need them, and we're prepared to respond to anybody who does.
So is it possible people could be staying the night at their place of business?
Absolutely, and if they need help, they should call 911, and Chattanooga Police Department is here to help them.
Sir, are the recruitment centers considered gun-free zones?
I don't know the answer to that. It's federal property. Typically, someone cannot bring a weapon into federal property unless they're authorized to do so.
What steps are going to happen now in the investigation? What steps are we taking?
Well, obviously, we're going to look at the shooter. We're going to do an intense look at him to see if what his connections are. We'll look at his friends, families, associates, anybody who is associated with him to determine the cause or the reason why he conducted this attack.
Will surveillance metadata from the NSA and other secret agencies spying on us be used to determine his use of his phone, his use of his computer, his searches, and other things like that?
I will say the FBI will use any and all means available to conduct a thorough investigation.
How old was the suspect?
Did he have a phone?
I don't know yet.
Did he have a phone?
I'm not going to discuss what he had with him at the time.
Was Chattanooga ever designated a no-fly zone today?
I believe there was a no-fly zone over the area of the crime scene.
Sole shooter? Any reason to believe others involved?
No, we believe it was a single shooter at this point. No reason to believe anybody else is involved at this time.
What was the time difference between when the first shooting started and the second one? How quickly did it take him to get?
It's about a 15-mile distance, so probably 5 minutes between the two shootings.
He was in that convertible car.
He was in a vehicle, but I'm not going to describe it. You've probably already seen it, but
Was there any prior indication that there might be an attack today?
no, we had no intelligence indicating there would be any type of attack today.
The officer was shot. Was he responding to a shooting, or was he ambushed? How did that?
He was involved in the pursuit and engaged the individual at Amicola, the location there.
Is that the officer who was injured in the gunfire?
I believe it is, yes. Chief?
There were numerous Chattanooga and Hamilton County officers who responded. They arrived on the scene extremely quickly, and they actively and enthusiastically engaged this brazen criminal. And one of those officers was injured by gunfire from this criminal.
So you don't know if it's the same officer who pursued from the first location?
We are confirming that. There were several officers involved. They responded very, very quickly. This incident occurred very close to where you're standing right now, which shows the brazen nature of the act. And police officers came from around this community to make sure that everybody here is safe.
Let me say one more thing. Do not get caught up in labels. The FBI and the other agencies are going to investigate this case thoroughly. They will determine, after the facts are determined, whether it's an act of terrorism at all, whether it's a crime and what the nature of that crime is, or whether it's a combination of those. And I would encourage you to not put a label to the investigation at this point, whether it be international, domestic, or any other kind of terrorism, including criminal acts.
I got a question.